Hey, everybody, welcome back, listeners around the world, and of course, to our good friends in the cosmos. I'll be your host for the next hour plus, Ghostman Shano, broadcasting live from the crossroads of America. This is your place for the strange, your Shadow Nation. Oh my goodness, oh my God, we got so much stuff to get into today. It's going to be a hot show. We got a good one for you tonight. It's a beautiful Sunday. I hope you're all enjoying your day. Um, a lot of times in podcasting, especially when you're trying to get your name out there and, you don't want to piss anybody off. So you kind of keep your political views to yourself. You keep your religious views to yourself. I want to go ahead and go on record and say Ghostman Sean Burris is not an atheist. I never have been, never will be. I'm a believer in the one true God, Jesus Christ. I was raised that way all my life, even coming from a haunted house where there was a ghost in the house. Dad used to have preachers come to the house and bless it. It was just something I did. I went to Sunday school. I went to Christian school until I was like in fifth grade, and then I went to public school. So I've been versed in the religious Old Testament, New Testament type beliefs. So no matter what you believe, I'm not here to cram down anybody's throat on religion today. That's not what we're going to do. We usually don't jump into that on the show, but we are going to get into a little bit of it because one of the hot topics that I cover on this show, because I'm so passionate about, is ITC, instrumental transcommunication, because I think that's the one thing that's going to prove the existence of life after death. And I've been researching a lot with it. I know you guys follow me on TikTok. It's really exploding. So thank you guys for that. But I did an Easter Sunday EVP ITC session last Sunday. And I thought maybe they would be, more powerful voices, more energy, because, the religious connection there with the day that Jesus rose from the grave and all that stuff. And it proved to be pretty solid. I mean, we got some great stuff with that ITC session. I wasn't in a haunted location. I wasn't nowhere spooky. I was right here in the office with Alien Bob behind me. And I was using my new stuff from Gary Galka, my APFD processor and spirit box. And I tell you, I put that on TikTok. And it got a lot of people's interest up, and a lot of people loved it, and they were really looking at it. Some were downloading it and trying to find more stuff, which they did. Thank you guys for that. They went through it. They went through the recording. They used Audacity, and they found stuff that even I missed, because there's always more that you can hear on different frequency levels, where the spirits are speaking softer, and sometimes you just don't catch everything. So I can't tell you enough the importance of taking your time, using Audacity, using any kind of sound editing software. I use a video edit software. It does both, because I usually make my shorts for YouTube and TikTok and everything, so I can share it with you guys. Some of those responses I've gotten over the years, and I've always asked this question, I've done this a long time, is why is there so much confusion? It seems like to me that there's a lot of lost souls, I guess, that wherever we're contacting with the use of ITC, whatever you believe, the psychics believe there's levels, 321 going up to the great abyss, I guess, the heavens or whatever. And we have to travel this on this journey, kind of like the ancient Egyptians used to believe. I don't know what I believe. All I know is fact that these voices do come through. And if you guys go back and, of course, check the shorts on the on TikTok, Shadow Nation Podcast 1, the digit number 1. If you go back on there and you check this EVP session for Shadow Nation Podcast 1, you can listen to the EVP or the ITC session that I did last Sunday. And I got a lot of, it used to worry me a lot when I got the help me's, because it seems like that was one of the very first ITC that I ever got was help me. And it was constant. And then for a while, when I was trying to prove things to people, which I don't do anymore, I don't care. I do this for myself and to help me have a better understanding of what's going on in the unseen world that surrounds us all. I got a lot of help me's, help, constant. I can't tell you how many. And I got a lot of, just a lot of confusion. In this last ITC session that I did on Easter Sunday, you have a woman plain as day say, "Are you dead?" So apparently, at least that spirit didn't even know if I was living or dead. She's just speaking to a voice that she was. I was asking, I think at the time, if spirit guides are real, could you assist me on communicating with the other side? Because psychics have told us for a long time that you have to, contact your spirit guides, and you could develop this relationship with these guides, and they help you connect to the other side. I'm free game, man. I'm open to everything. So I thought I'd try it out. So I was asking at that moment, if spirit guides exist, could my spirit guides help me with this session? And this woman's voice comes through plain as day. Guys, you got to go listen to it. There is no scrambling. There is no, oh God, he pulled that out of the low frequency or whatever. That's just gibberish. Plain as day. She says, "Are you dead?" It's like I'm talking to the lady sitting next to me. So she didn't know the difference between the living and the dead. For as far as she could tell, from what I take away from it, is I could have just been another dead person talking to her. Maybe that was one of my spirit guides. I don't know, but you would think they would know if I was living and dead. I played it twice. I got another sample of someone saying, "Where are we? Where are we?" And then I asked another session for, "Could you give me a name? Just a name, try to balance it out and make sure I'm talking to who am I talking to, so I can address that spirit politely and try to have a conversation." And ultimately, we're trying to find out, what is death, what happens on the other side, everything else. So I'm still trying to build my connections with these entities. And it says, "Who am I?" Which is it's kind of spooky, thinking about, do we all go to this place, this realm where we're just totally confused and we're just walking around trying to make sense of what's going on with, I hope not. Jeez, oh Pete, I hope not. Is this what the Catholics believe is purgatory that we talk to? Is that like the closest realm to us that we can communicate with? I don't know. I have all these questions. And if you guys get into this ghost hunting and ghost research and communication, you're going to have more and more questions, man. It keeps coming at you, and sometimes I can't sleep at night. I stay up at night and I think about the possibilities of what's going on, and I run the spirit box, try to get more and more answers. And I'm doing really well. I'm getting 2 to 3 word responses. It's not just the help anymore or the John or whatever. It's not just the one word quick ones anymore. And especially with the new processor and things that I got, I can slow it down. I can go back 10 seconds and replay it. I can change frequency. So, Galka makes some good stuff. Promeasure.com, plug for you, Gary. But yeah, that's been amazing. That's been an amazing experience. But you guys got to go to TikTok, and that's at Shadow Nation Podcast 1. And of course, go to YouTube, like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe so you can follow, because these shows usually go up on, these episodes go up on our YouTube, which is at Shadow Nation Podcast. That's at Shadow Nation Podcast on YouTube. And go ahead and subscribe and follow. That way you'll get an alert every time a new episode drops, or anything that I do, a ghost box session, whatever, which we're going to do on the show live, me and you around the world. We're going to do it live right here on the show, so you guys can see what I do and see there's no, whatever. But within seconds of posting those ITC clips, you guys wouldn't believe, and I'm used to it, the attacks by the skeptics. You faked it. It's always funny because when they're really clear, it's, oh, you faked that. That was staged. And when they're not so clear, when they're kind of a little bit of gibberish and you got to kind of clean it up with whatever, then they say the brain perceiving out of chaos. It's trying to make sense of something, and it's just wishful thinking. Basically, you're trying to draw something from nothing. So it's really a no-win with skeptics. So I don't deal with it. I'm skeptical myself. That's why I try to do this stuff in a scientific controlled environment right here in my office with no interference. So yeah, I mean, that's the scoop with that. You will be attacked if you go online with your evidence. It doesn't matter if you have the ghost of Elvis Presley, baby, sitting right here in studio. Somebody's going to tell you that it's phony, it's faked. And that's why I gave up trying to prove it to people. I have nothing to prove to anybody. I know these things exist. I grew up with it. I've had it all my life. And, I don't see ghosts every day. That's not what I do. I'm not a psychic medium. Although sometimes I feel like we can all sense things, right? You walk into a room or something, let's say somebody just had a big fight or something, you can feel the tension in the room. I think it's the same thing with like spirit activity. You can just walk into these old haunted places and you can feel, maybe it's just me, maybe it's the history that happened to these places, which I love. I love that part of ghost hunting or ghost investigation. I'm a ghost experiencer. I walk in, I set up the equipment, and I say, show me. I don't walk around with meters in my hands. I don't write down, what the EMF meter reading was at that time, every second of every minute that I'm on an investigation. I walk in and say, show me. And if a place is haunted, I believe it's going to produce fruit. It's going to show you what it has to offer. I always said a haunted place is a living thing, that it breathes, it draws energy, and it will talk to you if you're willing to listen, if you know how to listen. So I'm still working on that over the years. You got to know how to listen, even with ITC. Like Gary was saying a couple of weeks ago, even tonight's guest, you have to develop an ear for this. Now with my IT stuff, you didn't really need an ear for it. It was right there. It was in your face, and it came right at you. Boom, 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 boom. If you couldn't hear it, you're deaf and you need to go get tested for your hearing capabilities. But I wanted to jump into today because I've been thinking about it for a while. Oh, before we get into that, I wanted to address real quick the drama in the paranormal community. I'm a little late on that, guys, because I didn't have a show last week. I had a last-minute cancellation. But the drama in the paranormal community. Destination Fear, I watched the show a couple times. Seems nice, right? 3 young people, they go to places, spooky, right? They get to go to these places and sleep there and do everything. And as you guys know that listen to the show, I myself hosted Extreme Paranormal on A&E. It's been about 10 years ago with Nathan Schoonover and Jason Gowan. So I've seen both sides. I've been to the show. I've seen behind the scenes. I've seen the puppet strings. I know how this process works. And it seems like Travel Channel, Bio, all these other places, every 5 years, they try to clean house. They come through and change the shirts, right? It's like changing clothes. They try to get something new, baby. They want a fresher breath air. That's why it was so hard. When I was doing Extreme Paranormal, I had to sign the contract that basically you sign your life away on. And I was with Nathan and Jason, and they really weren't working full-time jobs at the time. And they didn't have a family, so to speak, kids, stuff like that. I had a full-time job that I had had for years before I got the TV show. And I had children. So I had to worry about the kids and insurance coverage and who was working my shift for I wouldn't lose my job while I'm reading script and preparing for the scene on Extreme Paranormal and doing the voiceovers and all that stuff. So it was a lot of pressure. It was a lot of, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I had a great time. And if you guys go to the TikTok page, you'll see that too. I put a lot of behind the scenes stuff out there, and it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about being on screen. It taught me a lot about people in the audience, the ratings, how rating system works, which we did get good ratings, by the way. And I truly believe, and I stand by the statement, is we were a show way ahead of our time. We pushed the limits at a time that other shows were saying, don't do that. That's taboo. You know, if that's a demon's name, you don't call out the demon's name and stuff like that. And we got together and we thought, if we're going to do this, let's do it. You know, call out that demon's name. For the sake of paranormal research. If you're going to call out this demon's name and he's going to bust through the door and show himself to the world, then let's do it. Show me. I want to see it. That's why I was away from my family for months on end filming a show, not just to, pick a wedgie. I was there to find evidence. So, and we did find a little evidence, and we played it on the television show. A lot of television is entertainment. It's we never faked anything. Nothing on Extreme Paranormal was faked. But a lot of things you see on television are overreacted to. Does that make sense? They're overreacted to. Like for instance, I got an EVP setting in a jail cell at the New Mexico State Penitentiary. Good EVP. It was great. It was man screaming, plain as day. We even had some people from the sound crew quit when they heard it. They El Diablo, right? They didn't want anything to do with it. They had to actually shut down production for like half a day till we could bring in some other sound people. And at that point, I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. Guys, come here, listen to this. And they yelled, cut. And they said, okay, we're going to roll again. We want you to act like it just happened, but we need a bigger response. So do you see what I mean? It wasn't faked. It actually happened. But I went from, oh man, that's awesome. Guys, come here, listen to this. I went to, oh my God, guys, come here. You got to hear this. You got to hear it. Oh my God. So see, that's television. Because believe me, you do not want to watch me on a ghost investigation, because 90%, 85%, you're not going to get anything. It's as boring as watching paint dry sometimes. The only cool thing is the people that you're with. That's why you need a good little team. 1 or 2 solid friends is all you need. You don't need a huge group going through these places. I think that's oversaturation. I think it kills the whole ghost vibe. I think it takes away from your findings. It's so hard to prove, because the more people you got, the more clutter you have to deal with and explain when you get a good EVP or you get a good ITC session. So it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it. It taught me a lot. And what I mean by it taught me a lot of good things about the television world. And it taught me some bad stuff. It taught me, this is the first time I ever talked about this, but it taught me how cutthroat that a lot of these paranormal investigators can be when it comes, I guess it's just like any other business, when it comes to money, the almighty greenback, right? This stuff that keeps America moving or the world moving. It's, nobody wants you to mess with their meal ticket, right? Everybody's got to be the best of the best of the best, the newest gear, the flashiest lights, the brightest, lights that you can find, the whoop, whoop, whoops and beep, beep, beeps. You got to have that for TV. I mean, people want to see it. And apparently shows like Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures, they've been on for years. So apparently people love it. They still want to see it. So it must be doing right? It must be working. So, but I did find out that a lot of the shows, and there were a couple, and I'm not going to mention names. There's no need to do that. I have no hateful feelings towards these shows all the luck to them, whatever. But they got their fan bases because we were so extreme. Get it? Extreme paranormal. We were so extreme. And the things we were doing were groundbreaking. They had never been done before. They got, and we've seen the emails, they got their followers. Since some of them had been on maybe a year and a half before us, they had large amounts of followers. They actually got their followers to go online to A&E and try to boycott Extreme Paranormal or talk as much shit as possible as they could to try to get the show pulled from the network. It seems like the little fish come in all of a sudden when people love, and I don't know why this is, but people love to see, not all people, not me, and I'm sure not you guys, but people love to see people that get success or get a shot at something. A lot of people love to see them fail. I don't know if it's jealousy or threat or they're scared, but they love to see a hero in a story stumble. They love to see it. And it makes no sense whatever. I wish everybody the best. I hope if you have a new show, I hope it hits #1 for the charts. And I hope you get to do it 100 years and make millions of dollars and do what you love doing. Because, man, I got to live that dream for a while. Even though it was short-lived, I was out there. I was ghost researching. I was on camera and making money. And I could feed my wife and child, and I was doing what I loved. But it was so damn hard because I had a full-time job that I had to worry about insurance for the kids and making sure there was food on the table and all this stuff. So it was so hard to pull both. And, a lot of times I think if Hollywood calls back, which they have a few times, it's been smaller things. I've got to do them, evil things on the Travel Channel. You'll see me every once in a while pop up on bio, travel, whatever, sci-fi. It's been 1 or 2 episodes, little things. And I get to go out there and do them for a day or two, and then I come back home. So it's no big deal. But to do an undertaking like Extreme Paranormal was, you have to be gone on months on end, which is very hard when you have a full-time job at home and you have to worry about the aforementioned insurance and stuff like that. But I just wanted to throw that out there with you guys. It seemed like everybody was surprised that there's this drama in the paranormal community, that one person that was part of another group came forward and told how much of an asshole that one of the guys was from the other show. And I don't know why it's so hard to believe. I mean, we're surrounded by a-holes, right? I mean, there's a lot of them out there, and you run into people and you have to live and let live and go on. But kudos to him for coming out with the story and everything. I hate when people do stuff just to stay relevant. Things get slow. I think it's kind of like the panty slip, the nipple slips in Hollywood. I think their agents actually tell them, don't you guys? Like when, what was it, Britney Spears was getting out of the limo, and you seen her panties or you seen her private area. And I think, and then you had the nipple slip at the Super Bowl. I think their agents actually tell them, hey man, things are going slow. We need a little juice to pick things up. I think that stuff happens to keep you relevant. Excuse me. And yeah, so I think that stuff happens to keep a lot of people relevant and keep them in the spotlight. And that's your meal ticket, that's your bread and butter. You have to do it. And one thing I haven't liked, though, over the years is the fact that I remember when I had Extreme Paranormal and we were on top and everything was going on, a lot of these haunted locations, they're your best pals. They want you to come out. They roll out the red carpet. It's free of charge, because of course you can do something for them. You can sign autographs while you're there. You're going to put their stuff on television, so it's great promotion, right? Yeah, it's good business sense. But once it fades, once the bright lights go away, and you're not as relevant anymore. And like me, I don't need that. So I don't need to go on air and bash anybody or try to stay relevant. I just do what I love to do, talk to you guys and talk to the spirits, because that's why we're here, right? So, yeah, that fades away. And all of a sudden you find yourself fall to the bottom of the list when you call these people. And I found that with a lot of haunted locations too. I've reached out to a lot of them to come on this show and talk about their haunted locations. And some of them won't even respond to the email. I don't know why, but I think a lot of them just, now when I was on top, Extreme Paranormal, they would blow up the emails. They wanted to come on the show. They wanted to talk about their haunt. And a lot of them still do. Don't get me wrong. A lot of them still do. I love to help out these haunted locations. I know they need money. They need to restore them. And we all want to see these old places stay around for a long time so we can investigate them and keep the history of the places alive. A lot of them are old historical places, and they're awesome. I just want to say, with one exception, one man, which I considered a dear friend, passed away now. His name was Billy Bird at Octagon Hall, octagonhall.org. Or if you want to see some paranormal activity, go spend 3 days at Octagon Hall. I dare you. Go sleep there and bring your gear. And if you want to see activity, Octagon Hall in Franklin, Kentucky is the place to be. I'm trying to get back out there now. I got booked for upcoming PopCon here in Indianapolis in August. I don't know yet if it'll be a Friday or Saturday. They still haven't put me on the poster. They haven't really told me anything, but I got booked. I love talking to the people in the crowds, and they seem to enjoy me. So I'm going to take that opportunity to go out there. I'll take you guys with me, and maybe we'll live stream from there. Yeah, but I just want to jump into that. No drama, no name mentioning, but a lot of drama going on. But there is always a lot of drama behind the scenes. You guys just don't see it. And the name of the ghost show, the name of the business for the paranormal community, definitely ain't Ghost No More. It's you guys figure it out on your own, but it definitely is floated away from the paranormal. There's a lot more to it than just going out there and looking for the evidence. So with that said, let's jump right off that. I want to get into real quick, because I told you at first, I am not an atheist. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. And one thing that's weighed on my mind for a long time, because I do this spirit communication, right? One thing that has weighed on my mind for a long time is what the Bible says about spirit communication. Don't dabble with witchery, which I don't. I don't cast spells and stuff like that. That's, I guess the Bible is perception, right? You can perceive it any way. You can twist it any way you want. You can try to do the best you can, decipher it. Sometimes you understand, sometimes you don't. But I was looking up, what does the Bible say about talking with the dead? And right here on my phone, it says at the top of the line, God's word forbids the practice of talking to the dead. Forbids the practice of talking to the dead. And it says all throughout the Bible, we see clear warnings issued to God's people about consulting mediums and talking to the dead. Apparently, Leviticus 25-7, the law of God opposed such practices and clearly warned the people to pursue holiness. So, you got to remember, a lot of the parts of the Bible were written by men too. And, you can look at it in a lot of different ways. People go to mediums, stuff like that. They could have looked at that as challenging the power that mediums or something people could have started following the medium as a false prophet, or these people can talk to dead people. So, and it could have been a power shift there. I don't know. There's different ways. What does the Bible say about talking to the ancestors? The Bible has a negative view on necromancy or attempts to communicate with the dead. In fact, all contact with the spirit world, this is what got me, all contact with the spirit world is expressly forbidden, irrespective of the nature of the spirits concerned. So I just want to get into that I don't know the scripture. I remember Bible Sunday school. I don't remember getting into talking to spirits. I don't feel what we're doing is wrong. Of course, back in God's time or Jesus' time, there wasn't spirit boxes and the use of radios and all that. They mentioned mediums, which I guess you could say the spirit box or whatever is used kind of as a medium. We go through them, but I don't put my faith in a lot of psychic stuff. I want to see it. I want to hear it. I want to know what's in the spirit box. I know that it's an AM FM radio. I know that I can set to scan to 200 millisecond or 250 millisecond or 150 millisecond. I know what sweep rate I'm at. And I know what the probability is, or the possibility of picking up I love you, or my name is Daniel, when you're sweeping through 120 radio stations at 100 or 200 milliseconds. So I feel it's different. I don't feel that it slaps religion in the face in any way. But it was something that was on my mind. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It was something that concerned me as a believer, in Jesus and God and all that stuff. I have haunted items all around the studio here. You can't see her right now, but right here to the right of me, I have the haunted angel statue that I took out of a person's home that she moves on her own. She's been blessed. She has a crucifix around her neck, and now she sits here in the office. I've never had any problems with her whatsoever. I have a replica of the Dybbuk box. That box right back there, you guys can't see. It's just a big black right there at the top. That was stored with the actual Dybbuk box. So it was a sister box to the Dybbuk box. It was bought apparently just months after the original Dybbuk box. And you guys all know the story about the Dybbuk box and what happened to my family and Nathan, and my old co-host, and myself after bringing the Dybbuk box on the show with the owner, Jason Haxton, at the time. So this stuff is real. Even though I believe in God and everything else, you can still be attacked. It's a dangerous game we play, with the spirit realm and everything. And if they're strong enough or whatever, maybe it was a demon, maybe it was just a bad spirit attached to a box, but I truly believe something happened, And one of the big skeptics, Kenny Biddle, we used to be really close, good friend. I still consider him a friend. He's written a couple books on skeptical stuff, whatever. That's his niche. He's trying to make, doing his thing with skeptics and making his way in that path, down that path on the skeptical route, which I'm skeptical too. I believe in the afterlife, and I believe that I believe there's a lot of false information out there about the paranormal, but I believe that there's a lot of truth out there too that gets dismissed way too fast by cynical skeptics. I'm not going to say skeptics, cynical skeptics. And they probably cynical because they've been burned. They went to a medium or something and got lied to, or they got sick of seeing, an orb picture that was dust or whatever. I don't know. But a lot of times they get cynical, they get skeptic, or they start out skeptic and then they become cynics because I guess the power of trying to prove people wrong becomes more important to them than the actual study of the paranormal, the research. So instead of trying to reach out and continue to study the paranormal, they spend all their time disproving what everybody else is trying to do, So whatever. But anyway, sticking with ITC this week, I wanted to jump into another person that's in this field. She's an amazing lady. And of course, you guys know last week I had on Gary Galka from promeasure.com. And this story is very similar to Gary's, but this lady is a truly amazing lady. She's been in the field for a long time. So let's just go ahead and jump into tonight's guest. Tonight's guest is an author and ITC researcher. Her name, Miss Sheri Perl. She started practicing ITC in 2016 and since helped several of grieving parents all over the world connect with the loved ones on the other side using what I call the old school methods of ITC research. And you guys are going to hear what I'm talking about, the old school methods. We're talking about stuff that was created by Friedrich Jurgensen, different techniques by different types of investigators over the years with ITC, water running, fingernails scratching across microphones, stuff I didn't even know was possible. So she's going to tell us tonight all about it. So please, ladies and gentlemen of the Shadow Nation, help me welcome to studio tonight's guest, ITC researcher and author, my friend Sheri Perl in studio. Sheri, how you doing? So good to see you.
Nice to see you too, Sean. Thank you.
You having a good day? Everything fine? I know you're getting over the voice thing.
I'm fine. Yes, fortunately, I got well real quick. Just a little laryngitis there.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's that time of year, springtime moving in, summertime coming. So the weather's changing and everything. But I got to tell you, it's so fascinating. And it's such a treat to have a fellow, what do they call us now? Are we freaks? Are we?
Well, you know, we're EVP researchers or ITC researchers, but they call us out of our minds, basically. So I'm used to that.
That's true. We were talking about that earlier this week through email. You and I were talking about how taboo it is still to this day. You know, and I got to send you some clips of what I've been doing. You sent me some amazing clips, guys, that we're going to play for you. Sheri has done some amazing work over the years. She's been doing this longer than me. And what you sent me has shown me a new way, and if I will, old school style of doing what this is where we came from, guys. The way Sheri performs her ITC practice, her sessions, is where it all started. The way she does it with water running in the background, an oscillating fan, fingernails on the microphone. We'll get into all that, but it's just truly amazing. Such an honor to have you on.
Thank you.
And I wanted to jump right into your amazing life, your history, what got you started in this. That's always the juicy stuff, right? Because none of us start out on this path and then we end up on this weird path. So how did it all start for you?
Well, back in the day when I was born in 1951, we did not talk about these things very much. I grew up in a home with a father who was an atheist and a mother who was agnostic. And by the time I was 16, I honestly felt that people who were into the spiritual stuff we're into now were either deluded or just stupid. Like, I'm not falling for that one kind of thing. And so I really had no interest or patience in the afterlife. And I probably would have continued that way. But at 16 years old, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. I don't know if your listeners know what it is. It's inflammatory bowel disease, ileitis, colitis. And of course, my parents and my family believed only in Western medicine. And so that is all that we pursued. And after a year, I was getting worse. You know, I was given all kinds of medications, but the illness just got worse every day, which meant that I always had stomach aches, and it's really not a lot of fun, you know. And after a year, a friend of my father's who was British was visiting us, and he told us about a man in England that was called the Man in the Sanctuary. And they said that he could heal people, even people that were not locally with him, that could be clear across the ocean. And I said, that's absurd, you know, and I can't even imagine such a thing. And I ignored the information and went on. And another year of illness ensued, to the point where by my senior year of high school, I couldn't go to school anymore. I was tutored at home. I was in pain all the time and eventually started to hemorrhage. And from the hemorrhaging, I was given blood transfusions and I was infected with the hepatitis C virus because in 1970, they didn't check blood like they do now. So eventually all the surgeries removed my colon. It was a terrible time for an 18-year-old girl, but I eventually began to recover, and that's when we discovered the hepatitis. I started to feel very sick again, and they told my parents to just, you know, have me bed rest for 6 months because hepatitis will cure itself with the proper rest. They did not know what Hep C was back in 1970. So they just said, have a rest. And every month they gave me blood tests, and there was never any improvement. And after 6 months, they said, "Oh my goodness, this could be the chronic form. That does not, yield to bed rest. And we'll do a biopsy. We'll find out if she has that." And of course, the biopsy showed that I had chronic hepatitis. So at the time, they were very, very worried. There were no treatments, and they told my parents to give money to research and hope that they would come up with a cure.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I was pretty shook up. And somewhere in my mind, actually, I started reading books about Edgar Cayce and the wonderful psychic, and how he would go into trance and would prescribe cures and explain the purpose for an illness. And I was so fascinated, and I was so sad because Cayce had passed and I couldn't get an appointment. And I was desperate. And then seemingly out of nowhere came this memory of the man in the sanctuary. So we called my dad's friend, and they gave us the name. It was Harry Edwards, who some people may have heard of, but he passed in 1976, so he's not been around a while. But we had my dad's office my dad had an office in England. So they called up the sanctuary, and they said, "Oh, just have her write us a letter and tell us of the trouble for which help is needed." I was just shocked. I couldn't imagine that I didn't have to take off my clothes and get poked. Like, you can go anywhere with medicine, Western medicine, without going through a lot just to find out what you've got.
You're right. You are right.
I didn't see how this could do anything. It was not a belief that I believe. It wasn't as if I believe and I'm going to get well. I didn't believe anything. I was just a young girl who was desperate. So my dad was going to England on business, and he offered to hand deliver this 10-page letter that I wrote explaining all my problems. My dad saw Mr. Edwards on a Thursday, and the next night, which was Friday night, I had more energy than I had had in a long, long time. And I had a feeling in my liver, in the area on the right side, that was like tingling, like pins and needles when you cross your legs too long.
Sure.
And I kept walking around saying to the family, "Something's going on." But, they all thought, "Well, we're glad she's having a good night, Right. And my dad came back a couple days later and said, "Well, looks like an ordinary man to me." And he tossed me a couple of books that Mr. Edwards had given him. So I start reading them because, don't anybody email me now, text me now.
Somebody loves you. Yeah.
I start reading the books. And 2 weeks later, I went for that monthly blood test, and it had jumped a third of the way to normal after no change. So now I'm beginning to think that there might just be something to this. Not only that, but I got uplifted emotionally. There was a sense of maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel kind of feeling, like encouraged. And so, but what I couldn't understand at the time was how in the world did this man, I would say, "Well, what is this energy traveling transatlantically? How does it get from England to New Jersey?"
Right.
It made no sense. Then I started reading his books, and he explained that he did not work alone, that he worked with spirit doctors, is what he called them, and that they really were responsible to carry out the healing, that he was more or less the messenger to them, and they would direct an energy to the patients. And since they are in spirit and there's no distance or time in the spirit realm, they could be anywhere in no time. So
this was Mr. Harry Edwards, right?
Yes, Mr. Harry Edwards.
You said that caught my interest. He had a team of spirit doctors that he worked with.
Oh, yeah. And he never claimed who they were, but psychics drew drawings, and it was believed that he worked with Louis Pasteur and Lord Lister. But who knows? That's all speculation. What I know is that he worked with some incredibly powerful group, because within 6 months, my blood tests were normal. And what's really interesting is we didn't have the internet then, so all the mail went snail mail. Oh, yeah. And I would write him every week or so and tell him of my progress. And he would never write back and say anything definitive like, "We think you'll get well." He would just say, "We will look for a slow, progressive healing." And I had no idea what that was, but I was going to take it, Right. And so the clincher for me was that I finally so it started like in June, I guess, of 1970, and now it's December, and I went for a whole set of blood tests because they wanted to see where everything was at. That was on a Monday, and I was going to get the results like at the end of the week. So I sat down to write Mr. Edwards a letter, but I hadn't even mailed it yet. And I went out and there was a letter in my mailbox from him. And it said, "Dear friend, I feel that the healing has finally reached you. And this week you will be having tests that will prove to you the good news that healing has taken place. So when this happens, please, write back so we can, concur that this is what has happened." When I read that, I said, look, no one else knew but my parents that I was having blood tests, but he knew I was having tests. And he knew they were going to be good before I got the results. So now I'm just hoping and hoping, and finally called the doctor and they say, "Count your blessings. We don't understand what, but your tests are looking very, very good."
Yeah.
And so it was at that point where I understood that we were in some kind of communication that I did not yet understand, because I did not know that how could he have known about the tests and that they were going to be good before I'd even been given the results if there wasn't some kind of paranormal communication going on. I was 20 at the time. It was now the beginning of 1971. And I said to myself, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to find out. And it took over my life in the sense that I've been wedded to the spirit realm and being able to connect with it and contact it and just know that that there is an invisible realm that we don't see, and yet it's real. And
Absolutely.
so from 1971 on, this was my passion. Of course, I had other things in my life, and I've raised 3 children, and it's not like all I did was that, but it was like the backbone of what interested me. I'd never been so passionate about reading or learning anything until this point in my life. So initially, I would just call England or write to Mr. Edwards for other people who were having trouble, and observing that in many cases, not all, there was a really remarkable turnaround for the better. So that was, I kind of established sending letters to him and asking for help for people. So I started working in the healing team in a sense, before I really knew anything about it, because I was just so fascinated by it. That eventually led me to the home of Jane Roberts, the medium who spoke for Seth.
Mm-hmm.
It was very big in the 70s. Seth Speaks, his books were very big. And it was like, now I realize there not only was a realm that had spirits and life, but that there were people who could communicate with it.
Well, you got to work with a lot. Glenn Dove.
Oh, I love Glenn Dove.
Yeah, you got to work with a lot of world-known mediums.
Glenn is wonderful. He's a terrific guy. I performed his wedding ceremony.
Oh, wow.
So, we've become friends. But I finally realized, there was such a thing as mediumship, and that fascinated me as well. So I attended the Jane Roberts classes where Seth would come through and take over Jane's body and speak to the group. And so now I had a demonstration of a spirit actually entering into another human and talking to us. And it was mind-altering, because to hear about it from someone is very interesting, but to experience it yourself is what really makes the difference. So I went on, my husband and I adopted 3 babies at birth, not all at once, in 1981, 85, and 92.
Wow.
But always what was the inner lining of me was dedicated and interested in Mr. Edwards and Seth and all of that stuff.
Sure.
I eventually wrote my first book, Healing from the Inside Out and the Outside In, talking about the whole Harry Edwards experience. And I stayed close to Harry until he passed. But, we did adopt 3 children, and my son, Danny, our middle child, he was a loose cannon, great kid, big heart, big partier. And he passed from an overdose in 2008.
Right.
And no matter what you know about the spirit world, you know what loss is. It's, it's unbearable. And I, of course, was devastated. But shortly after But people who have had these experiences love to share them, because how else can others know? So many people really don't acknowledge anything but what they can see or feel, or the five senses.
That's true.
And it's a terrifying way to live, because then death is so terrifying to them too.
Right.
The more you learn about the spirit life, the less afraid you are.
Well, the thing I'm finding out about, and I say cynics, but I guess we could call them skeptics. I shouldn't say that, because there's a lot of, you have to stay skeptical. Heck, I'm skeptical myself.
Me too.
And I go out and research this stuff. But there are a lot of cynics that hide behind the coat of skeptic. And I think that does us a disservice, because they go out here and they, like you said, if I can see it and touch it, it's real. If it's not, don't come at me with it. And you're missing out on so much that's happening all around us. I didn't even know that, Sheri, until I started doing the, 16, 17 years ago, I started doing the ITC and the electronic voice phenomena. These things do exist, and they have something to say. And, it's amazing. Like I said, I post one thing and you got 50% of the people, maybe more, saying that's amazing. Then you got the rest of them saying you faked that. It's phony.
Oh, I can tell you.
No.
I remember talking with Glenn once, because he was saying, so people are basically saying I'm a fraud. And I said, you know what? It's not about you personally. They just can't get off the fence about the afterlife. And if you can't accept the possibility, you'll find any explanation. Oh, they're taping. They're going to they're reading your obituaries. You will come up with all kinds of reasons to explain it away. And they do. And it's unfortunate, because I really think if people understood that it doesn't end here, and you may get away with something here, you might not get caught, you might get away from it here, and therefore you say, who cares, But when you realize that what you have done will follow, that you will be you. You will just leave your body, but you will be you, and you will do a life review, and you will see what you've done from the perspective of anyone you've hurt.
What's been done in the dark shall be brought into the light, right?
That's what we're told. And so I feel as if, be good for goodness sake, because you will not escape who you've been. You might as well start trying to live your life now as a good human,
Yeah.
But look, we look at the world today. I was one of the hippies that marched around during Vietnam, and really, we really thought we were going to change the world. And
I miss those hippies. I miss the days of those hippies. You guys had it right, peace and love, and we shall overcome. And it's turned into just something I don't recognize.
Me too. It's really upsetting.
Yeah.
Really upsetting. But anyway, where were we? I was telling you about, after Danny passed, I was in bed, with my computer, and I would be like beating myself up, because I woke up in the middle of the night that night, and I was upset, and I couldn't get back to sleep. And somehow I knew something was happening, and I didn't, but I had no idea what it was. And I was beating myself up, saying, I should have known, I should have called him, I should have woken him.
Sure.
And in my head, I hear, Mom, how could you have known? I didn't know. And I thought, that's probably true. You didn't realize, Danny. And then I'd think, I'd feel better for about a few minutes. And then I'd think, oh, that's just me, trying to make myself feel better. But I was angry at myself. I felt I was blaming myself. So I wasn't likely to say that. So I wondered, could it be coming from Dan? Because you hear these things in your own voice. Just like Dan, well, not EVP, but I mean, when you get a message directly, it's kind of your own voice, like that still small voice that we hear all day chatting away. And so I really couldn't know if it was Dan, and then, but here's one of the best stories. The next day I'm in my bed and I'm looking at my iTunes library, and I see a song I'd never heard. I had brought it from a sound, a sound from a movie. I had downloaded the movie, and I'd see this song and my eyes just rivet on it, and I feel like I have to listen to it. So I play it. It was called Freebird. And it says, if I leave tomorrow, will you still remember me?
Leonard Skinner, baby.
Right, Leonard Skinner. So I was at the end, he's like, I'm free as a bird, and this bird you cannot change. Whoa, this bird you cannot change. So I decided to just call him Free Bird in my mind. So 2 months later, my husband is going, we had moved into Manhattan at that point, and my husband was going up to the country club where he played golf and said, come take the ride with me. So I get in the car with him and we drive up. And we get off the highway, and this was like where we used to live, and everything's very familiar. And so I start thinking, oh my goodness, Danny and I used to drive in the car over here and get all emotional. I'm crying in the car and I'm crying in the car. And I hear in my head, Mom, calm down. It was not a bed of roses. It was never going to be. You used to, he goes, I'm with you all the time now. And then I would be like sleeping till noon, and then I'd go out with my friends. And he was like, you have me all the time now, cheer up, I'm with you. And so I felt a whole lot better, and we get to the golf club, and my husband goes to change, and I am walking to where I meet him at the first tee. And I see a bunch of men coming with their golf carts. And my first thought, vanity, thy name is woman. And my first thought was, oh my God, I've been crying. I must look a mess.
Right.
I go into my purse to try to reach for the little mirror. And I hear in my head, Mom, they're probably assholes. Why do you care? And that's more Danny than me any day. So in my head, I say back, well, they might not all be assholes, Danny, but why do I care? So I said, I'm not taking out the mirror. And I meet my husband and I ride around in the golf cart, and the sun is setting and I'm feeling so redeemed and better. And then we head home, and we're on the West Side Highway, which has the Hudson River to the right. And as anyone who's newly bereaved will tell you, those feelings that it's okay pass very quickly. So we're riding down on the West Side Highway, and I'm thinking, oh, that was just me. It wasn't Daniel. It was just my own thoughts. And finally, I had the impulse to say, Dan, if this is really you and it's not me making it up, give me a sign. And I look over to the river, and there's this big white sailboat with the name Freebird in big block letters written on the side of it.
Wow.
And I just went, oh my God. And, Jerry looked for a second and saw it, and we pulled off the highway. So I began to realize that in different ways, my son could show me he was present. And of course, I have videos of the lights going off and all the many different things that Danny was capable of doing. But that was kind of the extent of how I knew him. I would go to mediums and have wonderful readings, and I would, get certain things in my head. But how did I really know? In 2016, I saw an article about this couple in Russia, the Sitnevs, who swore they were talking with their son through something called EVP.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if I believed it, but I figured if that was real, and if these people were in fact doing this, I was going to find out how it worked. And so at that time, we had a group called AREI, Afterlife Research and Education Institute, and they had some directions on how to get started. But I am not that computer savvy, and I just couldn't get it together. So I hired a tech fella to come and help me get certain things on my computer. One was a sound source, and one was Audacity, a recording program.
Sure.
And I started just running the sound and recording it. What I was told was that, and I don't know if your listeners understand this, so let me go back. This has been going on since like the 1930s.
Absolutely.
It's not new.
Frederick Jurgensen.
That's it. So Friedrich Jurgensen, who was a filmmaker, I believe, was filming the sound of birds for a soundtrack. He was outside in nature filming sound. Mm-hmm. When he brought it into the studio and listened, he heard human voices. He heard messages. I think that was the beginning of them realizing that if you provided the sound, spirit could influence the sound through thought. So I started to just record sounds and then go back to the recording and go through it slowly. And EVP 11, the 11th recording I ever made, I said, my name is Sheri, who is this? And further down, you might have that one, I'm not sure. There's a Daniel, but it was his voice. And that's what convinced my husband, that I was not really going a bridge too far here, because he recognized Danny's voice, which is rare. You don't always get their voice because they're not talking through their mouths. They're influencing the sound you play.
Was that Clipper one, I Am Danny?
No, that was just, that was way down the line when I started experimenting with things like Clipper. Anyway, that was very encouraging. But mostly I would just go through these recordings. I started first with human vocal gibberish, because that's what I was taught to do. Craig Hogan, who was the president of AREI, was very helpful to me. And it was his website that had the beginning instructions. And so I just used, at that time, I didn't know you could use other sound yet. I just used the human vocal gibberish. And you sit and you listen, and it's very tedious because it's blah, 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 and you're going through that, trying to find, a little tiny little needle in a haystack, and I would go through it a couple seconds at a time, because if you go through really quickly, it's simply very hard to hear, even if there's I love you. If you're not isolating little bits, it would be like blah, 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 love you, blah, 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 and you lose it. So I'd go through little by little, and it was very tedious, but sometimes I would find things that were very encouraging. But then a woman who'd lost her son and was signing him up for the prayer registry. Her name is Vicki Talbot. She's excellent at this. We became friends, and she began telling me that many of the researchers in the field don't respect the human vocal gibberish, because you could get a false positive in that there might be a in the gibberish, and you hear Diana when it's really Diane. So she said, we only respect transform EVP, which is where you transform sound into words. You don't start with words, you start with sound. So I started trying to record the bathtub drain, water going down the bathtub drain, all kinds of different things, shaking your keys, any way to create sound, and found for me, I think I invented this. I call it finger scratch. I would scratch my finger over by the mic input of my computer, and the one you're going to play, Mom, I'm Happy, came through just scratching my finger. That's when I realized they really could do it, because at first I thought it was a trick of the gibberish somehow, that that there was a word left in it when it was made, and it came through. When you start using transform EVP and you start with something that has no gibberish in it, and you hear words, how could that possibly happen? We don't know.
Sharon, this was just with your fingernails scratching against the microphone.
Right. Well, I don't even use a separate mic. I tried it one time, but now I just use the computer mic. So I'd go over to where that little dot is on the side of the computer that indicates that's where your mic is, and I just scratch my finger.
And this is FS Mom, I'm Happy.
Yeah.
You want to try it real quick?
Play it.
All right, you guys, here we go.
I couldn't get... You try again. Mom, I'm happy.
Yeah, I hear.
Very really hear the happy. So that's when I realized that this is definitely a real phenomenon. And I started experimenting with all kinds of different sound sources. A friend of mine, Keith Clark, who's a researcher, he makes all these electronic streams, he calls them. So they have no vocal gibberish in them, and they're just these. One is called Spiritron C, and one they're like, ooh. Right. They worked too, but I could only hear maybe a couple words, and I couldn't always get the whole sentence. And then one day I started experimenting with something he made called Michael, and I'm listening. I recorded it. It was and I'm listening to what I've recorded, and I just start hearing sentence after sentence, and I thought, wow, this is fascinating. This is the best recording I've ever made. This is like a book. So I left it on my desktop so I could hear it again the next day. When I went back to it on the next day, it was all new mess. It wasn't the same. Like I always thought, if you made a recording, then there were EVPs, then that particular recording would only have those EVPs. You couldn't get anything else. But this seemed like it was just giving me new messages. So at some point I thought, well, I don't need to make a new recording. I can just use this. And I hear yes. And it's like I started getting answers to questions even before I finished asking the question. So I don't know why this works so well for me, since no one else seems to be able to hear it. I've been told that it has to do with clairaudience, that in a sense, I hear the word in my head a second before the sound produces it. And that's how I'm able to hear it. It
Well,
kind of,
Sheri, let's talk about that for a second, because that is a term that got to me. You mentioned clairaudient line.
well, I
Is
just call it
something
the line. I just call it the line because it's,
yeah, let's talk about it.
it's fascinating. What concerns me sometimes is that if I drift off and start thinking, I lose my focus. I will hear my own thoughts. I can hear my own grocery list. And then I've heard Dan say, Mom, we don't need the grocery list.
Yeah.
But I actually was taught something called bilateral stimulation, where you shift your eyes back and forth with your eyes shut. And if I do that, I am able to stay more with what they're saying. If I drift off into my own thoughts, it's as if this line picks up thoughts from
So you
me.
have to distract your brain somehow to get it out of the loop.
And that can be a little exhausting, but it's almost like meditation. You have to distract your mind from taking over every bit of your thinking.
Sure.
So I do have this sound source, and I call it desktop 80 because that was, that was, I left it on the desktop, and I guess it was the 80th. I don't know, but I can use that to get information. And I mean, they've told me, I remember a couple of years ago, they told me Trump would not win and the Senate would go blue, and I remember getting up in the middle of the night and checking my phone, and it was red and blue. And then I got up in the morning, it was both blues. There have been amazing informations that have come through, but I have to be careful because I don't want to give, I prefer the other form of EVP for readings because I want people to hear it. And I don't want the responsibility of possibly my mind getting in there and giving them a wishful thinking. People I'm really close to, like my sister will ask me, at one point her daughter-in-law wasn't feeling well and she was worried, and I went on and they said, tell her it's not life-threatening. So I will do things like that, but I'm very cautious because you don't know if it's your inner self or your own inner mind that's making these, that's saying these things. Is it wishful thinking? Will I let something through that I don't want to hear? It's tricky. Where
How
when
many times a week, Cher, do you think that you do this? You try sessions. How many times now?
In terms of the clairaudient line, I'll go on that every day just to say hello and
Oh, nice.
and get support because they're so loving, and kind to me, and they always call me beautiful woman. I enjoy it. You don't get that kind of love sometimes from people here in the same way. The spirit is just so wonderful. So
sometimes.
I can tell you stories of messing around with, but I will go on that line all the time. But for readings, when I first learned I could do this, I was so excited that I must have done a couple hundred readings, never charged, just did them. It's really tedious and hard work going through those recordings for people. So I don't try to do them. If someone gets in touch with me who's extremely bereaved and in a lot of pain, I'll offer to do one for them, because I have moms that write me and go, when I'm really down and I miss my child, I reopen my reading and I hit on some of those clips and it makes me feel better. So those kind of readings, I don't have any concern of messing it up, because either we hear it or we don't.
Well, I will say this, guys, talking to the Shadow Nation out there, Sheri has this ear that is, I don't know where it's from. It must be straight from heaven, because she can hear things. And I've done this for years too, but she can hear things just by using Audacity, the free program, right? I try to use the Audacity myself, but I usually end up using my audio video platform to do my audio and blah, 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 blah. But I sent Sheri some of my EVPs from last Sunday, or my ITC session from last Sunday, Easter Sunday, and I got some amazing stuff. You guys heard the lady said, "Are you dead?" And I was talking about the confusion there. The gentleman that kept asking, "Where are we? Where are we?" and all that stuff. So but I got in such a hurry. Sheri sent me back a clip of, and I didn't have time to load it today. I wish I did. I forget what it said. Do you remember what it said, Sheri?
Invitation for you.
Yes, invitation for you. And it was so crystal clear. What were you using with Audacity? What setting did you use there? You know, like you
I
don't know?
just imported the file. Actually, I think what I did is I went to the file you sent me, I played it
Mhm.
and recorded it, and then I just go through it slowly. I
Yeah.
have been told that I have a good ear. People will say I couldn't have heard it, but because you put the words down, then I was able to hear it. But I wouldn't have heard it if you hadn't.
And then
I
I got that one gentleman that I replayed and I slowed down off my processor, and it says, you must have strength,
I
but
like
you
that one.
interpreted it as something else. I
Oh,
feel
that was really no. I heard "Thou must be good."
that must be good, right? Right. But it was definitely a man's voice. It was,
No, those are incredible. And
I was scanning at 200 millisecond, which becomes a mathematical equation at that point. So with the processors that I use and the ghost box attached to it and all that, you can set how many milliseconds you're scanning. Just like if you were to take the dial on an AM FM radio and you spin it around, you can actually set it to where you're scanning at 200 milliseconds, 150 milliseconds. And it tells you you have to be going through, I don't know, 500 radio stations within a span of 7 seconds to get I love you, mom. So it becomes something that we can study scientifically if we wanted to, if there was interest enough there, but there's no money in it.
no, and that's for sure. I have to get one of those things that you use because I've never tried anything like that. I
Well,
just,
I'm going to introduce you to Gary. Gary
yeah,
Galka from last week's show.
yeah, he's great.
We did well. He does just as good work as you do. You guys would get along just fine talking about the different techniques. And that's what intrigues me about you. There's so many different techniques. I hook up my box, my processor, which is new, and I go at it from that form. And then I'll do your basic EVP where you're looking for ambient noise to make, come up. You set in the hallways, old school ghost hunting stuff. You sit in the hallways. Is there anybody here? And when you get home, you play back 3 hours of usually nothing. So it's
I'm
it's interesting.
not nearly as technical as you with all of it. I make a recording and I audit it.
Yeah.
I'm
Well, it's
very
that simple. I mean, you don't have to make it. Yeah, unless the skeptics try to come at you, which they do all the time with me. So
well. You're getting out there with all of this stuff as well, so you're open to a wide audience, and you're going to get both.
right.
But it's truly fascinating, and it's what I find about what you do, saying you're going into a haunted site and all that kind of thing, is that I just really want to be there to help people who need to be in touch, get in touch.
I wish you
And,
lived by me so you could come with me. I don't have a team anymore. It's
and
just
I'm
me.
just saying that scares me because, again, if they're haunting a home, they probably aren't that content in spirit. So they're still trying to cling to their last life or their old home. And I do think that you can get into having a group around you that you don't really want around you. You see, it would scare me to go into those sites because you're much freer with it than me. You'll just pick up who's ever there and they can say, am I dead? I keep mine to, a lot of time it's just loved ones wanting to comfort their loved ones. And it kind of keeps me out of the arena of spooky stuff.
But I haven't learned that yet, Sheri. It's not by my choosing. I haven't learned to be able to focus my mind to connect with one individual spirit or a certain type of spirit. I say a prayer. I believe in a God, and I say, in Jesus' name, please let this session go good,
No,
and
I
please.
heard, and that's fine, but you're still opening the door to absolutely anybody that wants to step in. And I will say, if I have a mother and a father, that, what I do when I do readings is I either use Zoom or I use the telephone. It used to be just the telephone before Zoom. And I would let them decide on 3 questions they wanted to ask. Are you happy? Can you hear me? Things like that.
Right.
So I bring the parent in through the phone and set it up by the computer. And for some reason, the right kid comes. Now, I do believe that Danny and Mr. Edwards assist me because I'll say, I'm going to do a reading tomorrow for Janie so-and-so. Do you have Mike? That's what they're saying. And they'll say, he's ready to go. You can do it. And then I will meet with them. We'll have a designated time, such as you and I did, and we'll get together and they'll ask their questions. And Then they sit quietly and we let the sound run for about 30 seconds. I would let the sound run longer after your question because the very answer might not come in. You ask questions, you give it a second, and then you ask another question. I give it 30 seconds, then I ask the next question, 30 seconds, and the next question, 30 seconds. I make like a 3-minute recording.
I usually give 10 seconds, but on the recording you heard, I cut it up in.
Oh, I see. Well, you want to give time to let the process, sometimes I'll find, Mom, it's me, not right next to the question, maybe like 10 to 15 seconds into the recording.
I wonder why that is. I wonder if there's like a delay between here and the spirit world.
I don't know. I don't think there's a delay as much as just they're doing their end. We're told, and again, this is all, I call it spiritual hearsay, because who really knows?
Yeah.
Well, some people maybe do, but I don't. But what I've been told is that there are stations on the other side, that I work with the North American station. My friend Sonia Rinaldi in Brazil works with the Brazilian station, and that they work very hard to use thought to influence sound. So it may take them a minute, to formulate what they're thinking. And I don't know how they do what they do, but it's the one thing that convinced me I was working with another intelligence besides my own, because I don't know how to take gibberish and turn it into words.
Sure.
If it were just me, then when I went back and played the recording back, I'd hear what I recorded, and that would be all I'd hear. Someone that knows how to do much more than me changes around the words to the point where I had one of my early ones, where the spirit said, "Say hi to Pedro." And I asked the mom, when it was all over, do you know, does he know a Pedro? And she said, "Oh, that's his dad's name and his brother's name." So, my goal, my aim, if I have a successful reading, is to get 1 or 2 or 3 that really is evidential to the parents. And I never know. One of my first readings, I got the word pajamas. And I thought, well, should I pass that on? But if I get it and it's decent English, I will clip it off.
Right.
Mom told me that her husband had passed, and she was a good deal younger, and they had had a baby. And the first year of the baby's life, and then the dad passed. But the first year of his life, they really could never get his feet in those pajamas with the little feet on the ends. Like they'd get one leg in, and they'd go to put the other, and he'd pull the first one out.
Right, sure.
So it was said to her, that was probably the most evidential one on the thing, because it was a joke between them that they couldn't get Anthony's pajamas on. But we lived in a building in Manhattan that had a playroom, and there was one, "I'll meet you at the playroom," or "Meet me at the playroom." Things where it means something to the people getting it. And I've had mothers say to me, "That's my son's voice." One mother sent me a note where she said, "My son said, 'Oh, Mom, I never thought I'd hear my brother's voice again.'" So I didn't understand, if they're not talking through their mouths, how in the hell do they get their own voice? It was explained to me that they're wonderful technicians and that they can sometimes get it off an old voice recording. It's not that they're speaking, but they manipulate from their side. So maybe it takes time sometimes to get the correct answer. But when I get a direct answer to a question, I will edit out some of the gibberish before it and just leave a clear, so that I can have the question and then what I found that seems like it's the right answer.
Right.
But I try to keep my work to not the end of, well, who's out there and what have you got to say, but can we get Johnny, can he come and speak with his parents? Because I feel like it protects me to not just be too open and free about it. What had happened was around 2018, I had just gotten to hear things through the clairaudient line. I did not do any protection. I didn't think I needed it because of Mr. Edwards and Daniel. I was like, why would I need that,
Now, are we heading into the leg here?
Yeah. And I was going on, I call them the leg for the lower entity group.
Oh, right.
But I was going on the line and getting messages like, "We're going to take you all the way down to hell." And I was working on a book with a friend of mine who had passed. It was a reverend who had passed, and we were writing a book about the afterlife. And they would be like, "You're not writing that book." And I got really scared, because I didn't know what they could or couldn't do. And it was a really stressful time, because they were, saying things that were not nice and putting a lot of trepidation in me. And at some point, my brother, who's quite spiritual, saw that I didn't seem right. And he absolutely insisted that I go to Santa Fe to spend a couple days with his healer, who he's very friendly with. And I was going to be teaching at a conference in Arizona. So he switched my flight from Arizona to Santa Fe, and his friend met me at the airport. And actually, she said the minute she looked at me, she knew there was something. She used the word impinged, that I was like impinged.
Attached to you?
Right. That's what she felt. So she said, you're not going on that line again. You don't open it up now. You don't do that now. And she taught me all about the importance of the light and how it would protect me and different things like Palo Santo and sage. And but on the third day, she said she took me to another woman, Deborah Doyle. And she said, we have 200 healers in Santa Fe, but I only know one or two who can do what Deborah does. So we went to Deborah, and she put me on her table, and she says, do you know that you have an entity attached to you? And I said, no, but I haven't been feeling really good. And she said, well, you want me to remove it? I said, yes, remove, yes. Then she said, well, do you want to know what it looks like? And I said, I guess, She said, well, kind of looks like a dragon, but it doesn't have any wings. And it's got really big teeth. So my eyes were shut during most of it.
So we're talking demonic here, or?
Well, more, I don't know. I mean, I know that it wasn't more demonic than Christ-like for sure.
Right,
but
right.
we started doing things with tuning forks and smoke and all this stuff. And she goes, oh, it's snarling. It doesn't want to leave you. It took like an hour. And at some point she said, it's gone. She said, oh my God, you're just all light now, just all light. And I was so relieved. I got up from the table and felt 100 times better. So I didn't know if I was going to be able to go back to it. I know of a number of people who were in a spiritual field and ran into that kind of interference and just gave it up. I'm done. But when you have a son in spirit, and you're and a Mr. Edwards in spirit, you kind of you don't want to give it up. And so I started learning how to work with covering myself in light, just making myself more protected. And so far, so good. The other thing I did was I listened to a lot of the Swedenborg. There's a whole group of young people who have studied the work of Emanuel Swedenborg. His books are really hard to read, but they have these things on YouTube where they discuss certain aspects of his work in terms that are much more understandable to people like ourselves. Right. And one of the things Swedenborg said, because he was an incredible mystic who would, I think he didn't use EVP. He couldn't. They didn't have it then. But he could actually talk with both spirits, both angels or devils, as he would call them. And he always said you need to have discernment. There's certain things that a spirit won't say if they're not, So I became much more discerning. And if I ever heard anything that didn't sound quite kind, I would just cut the transmission. I'd say, get a life. I'd cut the transmission.
Yeah. Yes.
But I have also feel that the light is very protective. And I was given a book by two different people during this time about a woman who'd gone through like psychic, attachment. And she had this prayer. And I changed it a little, but I say it before I open the line. I say, by the power of the divine inside me, which I serve, with all my heart, with all my soul, and with all my might, I encompass myself about in a circle of white light and protection, where only good and love may enter. Because, as someone said to me, Sheri, it's like you went to a foreign country in the middle of the night, got out of the airport, and just jumped in the back of a car and didn't know who was driving. See, and I feel like when you just open it up as you do, you don't know who's going to come through. And
that's kind of the risk I have to take, because I go into these places to find the evidence of what might be causing whatever's going on there. So I go into the trenches and put myself really in harm's way. If you only knew the story, Sheri, from the attack on my family by the Dybbuk box, just by doing this show. Have you ever heard of the Dybbuk box? It's allegedly the most cursed object in America, whatever. Some skeptic came out this week, said, oh, the original guy says he hoaxed it or whatever. Well, there's been 5 other people that have written books on it and everything else since then, and whatever. So this guy came on the show with the box. Within a day, my house almost blew up. My car was struck by lightning. All these things that were experienced by my baby, my wife, myself. So it's kind of like a surfer getting attacked by a shark, you have to get back on that board or you never will. So I drove within a week. I drove to do an episode of Monsters in America to the man's house, Jason Haxton, that owned the box at the time. And I crawled on my belly through the tunnels to come face to face with this thing that he had buried in 3 inches of dirt on all 4 sides where the rabbis had told him to do it. And he had it in a an encasement and everything. And I had to come face to face with this fear, or I might have not done this business at all. But my wife was ready to leave. She said, "You're going to have to stop this shit or I'm out. I can't."
I understand. It can be just terrifying.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I got back into it and haven't had a problem since.
Yeah.
So, but you know, I know of a woman whose daughter brought like a mask or something back from Africa, and they just felt there was something bad with the mask. They ended up burying it like deep in the ground. Also, look, you know, there's an invisible world, and it's got to have both light and darkness. We wouldn't know light without darkness, and we wouldn't know cold without hot, and that's kind of. Because I'll often say, well, then why didn't we just have a world of light? Why is there so much darkness? But
Sure.
we do learn by what, you know, by the seeing differences. We know heat because it's different from cold. And maybe we just have to learn to, I mean, maybe the task of taking birth in a human body is to face lots of challenges here that we won't get there. But when you cross over, if you're full of rage and anger, you're not going to turn into crossing doesn't just change you. You have to continually work out what's going on in your psyche. So some people have crossed over in the midst of great confusion, anger, hurt. And I do believe that no one stays ignorant forever. I mean, I hope that Seth used to say, no soul stays ignorant forever. So I'd like to think that at some point, even someone like Hitler could become a more compassionate soul, but he didn't cross over that way. And you have to go through a lot of experiences before you finally say, wow, this is not what I want. Right. So
levels, Sheri, talking about the levels, we talked about the leg, which is lower entity group. And that's the term Sheri came up with. And it's an awesome term. I'm going to start using it. You heard on some of my recordings, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, the confusion, the amount of confusion with some of these entities. We were talking about it before the show. Who am I? Where am I? Things like that. Now, some people have told me, well, those are the ones that are closest to us, you know, closest to the veil. That's why you connect to them so easy and you can hear them. And some psychics have come on the show and they've told me, well, we transcend. It takes times, but we move to different levels, if you will. You start here, you move up here, and you get closer to the light and closer to the light. I guess the more you learn, I don't know. It's confusing. But what, in your opinion, do you think, how does it start? Why are there so much confusion? Why did the lady ask me, are you dead? Plain as day. Why didn't she know the difference?
I find that hard to understand as well. I don't know why. But I think that there are realms, supposedly, you know, you have your light realms that get lighter and lighter the more you progress and understand of love and all that. And there are lower realms, they call it the Shadowlands, and they call the other the Summerlands, right? And the Shadowlands have levels of darkness. And I think that what Glenn Dove and what Glenn had said is, you know, we track like water finds its own level, that when you cross over, you track kind of to your own level. And so if you're really, according to Swedenborg, there's realms where there are just like people who just always smacking each other and they're nasty and they're always putting each other down. And they're darker realms, there's less light in them. And you can, apparently, people will go like in spirit, there will be, you know how we have social workers that will go into projects and try to help the people.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know, we have that here on Earth. I mean, there's projects and people go in and social workers try to help. They say on that side, there are those that do go down into the lower realms to try to help these people. There's a wonderful book called Testimony of Light by Helen Greaves, who's a medium who's passed recently. She,
Mm.
during her life, was very close to a woman named Frances Banks, who was a nun, but the two women loved spiritualism, and they would meet and talk. After Frances passed of cancer, she started coming to Helen, and they wrote this book together, Testimony of Light. And according to Frances, she could go down into these lower realms, and they would try to help people who were lost, but that she was never allowed to go down without what she called the illumined ones. She said, beings so bright you can't even look at them. She said they would go down with her because you need to have protection. So she never went down, but she spoke of a Nazi, a man who had been a Nazi, who was just lying in a bed, almost looked deformed, full of all kinds of breakouts, and that, but he's realizing like what he had perpetrated and is beginning to feel remorse. But they said she spoke of a painter. I think he had drank his whole life, and he went over, he crossed, but he was like in this very dark, gloomy room. And she said he was doing a painting of a door. But what was interesting was he painted a little bit of light coming in through under the door, which showed that on some level he knew that there was light, but that it's actually very gloomy and dark. And there is help. There's always help, but they don't necessarily want it. Sir Oliver Lodge wrote a book called Raymond or Life and Death. Sir Oliver Lodge's son, Raymond, died in World War I on the battlefield. And it's interesting, he says in the book, there are people here who don't believe that we can talk to you. And when we tell them, well, no, we can go to this like area, this place where we can be in touch with people on earth, they go, you're out of your mind. Right. So, there's this on both sides where people absolutely reject it. Look, we've met people who they're just nasty and they're unhappy and they don't know how to overcome that. And some get helped and do, and some people go through their whole lives like that. So I think that's what can happen is if they've crossed and they don't have any center that's developed, then they're going to be that same way until they're able to, like once you feel the remorse for all the harm you've done, you begin to raise a little bit, But I think that it's a process, and people maybe are, new souls, as they call them, like they really haven't learned values yet, and that they will through possibly many lives, but it's just incredible.
Sheri, if we're Christian faith and we're taught to believe in the Bible in traditional, type way, it says absent from the body, present with the Lord, correct? Absent from the body, which is a beautiful thing. Absent from the body, present with the Lord. But as you and I know, there's more to the story. It's not as black and white. And, me and my dad used to talk. And my dad, I lost him 3 years ago. I just got the cojones to start trying to contact him through the box. I almost get a feeling like, don't bother me in my head, because Dad was so religious that he really didn't. He believed in hauntings because I grew up in a haunted home. He's seen it. He was an alcoholic, not the majority of his life, but a lot of his life. And he finally found Christ, and he had the preachers come in and bless the house weekly and everything. Anyway, we all seen her. She was a floating apparition in the house. Dad, I get that feeling every time I reach out to him. Is there anybody there that knows my father, Daniel Burris? Is there anybody that can help me connect with? If spirit guides are real, could my spirit guides help me connect with my father, Daniel Burris? So, I try to reach out, do these various ways to get maybe Dad to talk to me. But I don't even know if I would believe it if Pop reached out to me, because the devil's a liar. And like you said, if I'm communicating with all these different things, hell, if I'm talking to you right now, Sheri, I could say, yeah, I'm Sean, baby. What's going on? And you would never know the difference.
That's absolutely true.
Only through your feelings.
Absolutely.
So what do you think about spirit guides? Because I don't know how I feel about them. And you're a more spiritual person than I am, I think. And what do you think? Are they real?
I think that you can call them spirit guides, but I don't know. I always look to Mr. Edwards. because he's in spirit and I have so much respect for him. But I don't know if everyone has a spirit guide, but everyone has what I call their own entourage, their own little group of beings that look after them from spirit. It could be an ancestor. It could be your father if he decides he wants to take on that role. So I think anyone can help guide you, and they're in spirit. They're a spirit guide. I don't know if everyone has one designated great guide for them. I think
Right.
there are beings, and the ones that still love you and maintain love for you will be more likely to be the ones that will show up. But again, if I keep it to that because to me that's safe. I keep it to people I love and helping people who miss people they love to connect with them. I'm not looking to go on and just talk to anybody. I wouldn't trust it. Like I know a woman who wrote a book and she's quite convinced that she's channeling Hunter Thompson. I mean, all these names. And basically, I've had someone come on the line quite a lot and say it's Jesus Christ of Nazareth, and I'll go, yeah, tell me another. And maybe it is, but I don't take. What I look at is if the information is helpful, if the information is going to help someone,
Sure.
then it's important to me. But I don't all these things about I've got Jesus. No, I've got Buddha. You might just put that name on it because that in your mind is someone you can learn from. But I don't know, plus I don't think we're any just one thing, we probably have had many lives. And so which me is coming through anyway, is it's hard to know. I just go by, how can we help? That to me is the only thing that really matters. I know there's a dark side. It scares me. And I try to just stay away from it. I'm not taking that on. I do know people who work with rescue. One who lives in Italy and some who live in Brazil, who literally, are very psychically gifted, and they will, with their helpers in spirit, they try to ease these, help the spirit, because they say the spirit is the one who's in so much trouble. If they're attaching themselves to someone, they're not content where they are. So there are people who work in rescue missions. I'm just not one of them because after all I've been through with this body and everything I've been through, I'm not willing to risk, although it could happen. I'm really looking to just make that love connection. So I'm not that adventurous as you, I'm, it's like, keep me in my nice little place where people, kids want to talk to their parents and, a wife wants to hear from her husband, and it's all in that kind of, avenue, where I'm not willing to just, I'm just going to go take my equipment and go into some scary house. And I think it's noble that you can do it, but it is scary, because that side exists. And I don't know. I mean, look, we have the same evil here on the earth.
Yeah.
Where does someone like Vladimir Putin even sleep at night?
Yeah, this is true.
To me, it's so very, very, very hard to understand how people get so twisted that they can do harm to others and it's okay by them. But that's why I kind of stay away from just opening up to anybody, and I try to have a planned act. I'm going to connect this person with this person if I can. And in that, I feel more protected.
Well, I always shoot a prayer to God the Father after, so maybe that's helping me,
Shoot the prayer before.
Yeah, I do that too.
Yeah,
I absolutely
you have to. And just envision, what I do is I breathe in and I envision drawing light and healing energy into me. And as I exhale, I envision it surrounding me. I think that from what we're told, and again, spiritual hearsay, but those that are in darkness do not like the light. It kind of is.
There's a scripture in the Bible that I was talking to a Catholic priest one time, and he knows I'm Christian and everything, and I'm a believer in God. And we were talking. He says, in the Bible, it kind of condemns "Thou shalt not speak with the dead." He didn't. I didn't. He gave me the scripture, the verse, all that stuff. I don't have it on me, and I'm sorry. I should have been better prepared. But somewhere in the Bible, it says it's either you shouldn't commune with the dead, or don't dabble with witchery. I don't know if they've gotten those two confused or what. Have you heard any of this with
Oh,
the
well, it's very big in the religious groups that this is all the work of the devil.
right?
And, I go back to the same thing. If I don't see why a compassionate and loving God would prevent parents from having contact with their child.
Right.
So, to me, the Bible wasn't written by God. God didn't grab a writing tool and write that out. These, even all the stories and the myths, they were told over and over for hundreds of years. They were spoken. And you know how we change stuff up. I mean, you paid, when we were kids, we used to play this game called telephone at birthday parties, and one person would start with one word and we'd whisper it around the table, and it seldom was the same word when it got to the end. So to me, the stories were told, people put their interpretations on it, and then some people wrote these Bibles. And so to me, it's like, it can't be the gospel. If love guides us, I think we're in far better shape, because I just couldn't imagine how it could be wrong for me to be able to hear Danny say, "Mom, I'm happy." And that's basically what a parent wants. Where is my child, and is he or she okay? I call that the parental mantra.
And just by turning on a radio or running water and asking questions, I mean, it's not like we're doing a satanic pact to get these spirits to come forward and speak and be heard.
Absolutely not. And I believe they're around us. Our little own entourage, those who love us, are around us and can see us all the time. So we're just bringing up a sound. We're just allowing them to show that to us by providing sound, because they can't make sound in our world, but they can influence sound. And also they can bring through images, orbs, all that kind of stuff too is a form of ITC, where they just do it to let you know they're there.
Now, there are some images that I'm going to show later in the show that you had sent me. It was it looks like an ultraviolet picture.
Isn't that wild?
It looks like a man's laying down on a pillow or side of a face. What is that?
I just see the profile of a man. I see the side of a face. But the best for these kind of images is Sonia Rinaldi in Brazil. Hers look like photographs. They are astounding. Mm-hmm. And again, she's just creating the conditions for spirit to work with her. She uses steam and light. Sometimes we use a reflective cloth. I have some images that come up on the cloth. If you give them the light, if you get the light right, and you get some either steam or some other thing, she uses steam a lot, sometimes a reflective cloth, they can do it. We don't know how to do it. They know how to do it. But what's the purpose? The purpose is to show that they're not gone. I mean, they're not over. They have gone on. And like you said, you just want to show people that death isn't the end, and that we will be reunited with them. So the image, I clearly see a face, but you have to hold it back from you. I see a face and a profile, kind of little hair on the top.
No, it's there.
Yeah. So I was shocked when I found it. You make a recording, and then you go through the recording just like you would go through an EVP recording. Only
Was that with the video camera, Sheri?
The one on my phone. I just used my iPhone.
Yeah.
And all those orb videos that I sent you.
Mm-hmm.
The way that started was that a couple of years ago, my little dog Lily started just carrying on, barking and carrying on. Took me a while to even think, my goodness, maybe I should put on a video. What is she seeing that I don't see? She sees them and she gets really crazy. So I started turning on the video, and all these orbs were just flying all around. Interestingly, as soon as I start to video, she sits down and goes back to sleep. So I...
Oh my God. That's beautiful. Oh my God. All right, Lily. All right, Lily. Okay, they're not going to hurt you.
So I think they kind of nudge her to get my attention, because as soon as I get started, she doesn't seem agitated anymore.
And I think that's a perfect opportunity, Sheri, for us to go ahead and play some of those videos and pictures right now.
Do it. Were made.
Well, Sherry sent me, guys. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 good EVPs. And I couldn't believe it. They were amazing to me. But the first one is very personal. It's you and Danny. And it says, Danny, can you say, I love you, Mom? Now, was this one of the first ones when Danny had just passed in 2008? Was this when you first started branching out, wanting to talk to your son?
It was probably in the first year or so. I don't date them, although the computer might, I guess. But it was not.
Were you scared? Were you a little nervous, like I was, to talk to Dad?
Well, I wasn't nervous to talk to Dan, but I was just nervous because you're not sure when you get started if anyone. First, you're afraid you might be disappointed and nothing will come through, or something will come through that you don't want, like what happened with the leg. So I was a little scared of that, sure, but I never would be afraid to talk to Danny.
Right.
Danny's Danny.
Just got nervous, butterflies in your stomach.
Well, it was really weird at one point. One of the first ones I had been going to a medium who my husband and son suspected was faking different apports, because it wasn't in a dark room. He would just call me over and do this thing with our hands, and I'd end up with a little stone in my hand. And I went on and I said, look, I took all the stones that I had and I played them on the computer. And I said, look, you guys know better than I do. Is this real or is this fake? And the first thing I had heard, this is like one of my very first, out of nowhere, I heard fake. And I really jumped 3 feet. I was like, because yes, it's shocking. You don't think it could work. You can't imagine that it could work. It sounds so bizarre.
Wow.
But no, I know. I've got hundreds of readings to show you, that prove it.
Well, here's the first one. Danny, can you say, I love you, Mom? So here we go.
Danny, can you say, I love you, Mom?
Now, that sounds very clear to me. Let's play it one more time.
Danny, can you say, I love you, Mom?
Yeah, I mean, it's right there. I love you, Mom. Yeah. So
And
how did that make you feel when you got that one?
Thrilled.
Yeah.
And that was using the human vocal gibberish. For readings, I very much stick to gibberish because plant a radish, get a radish. It's because it's a human vocal to begin with, and it's easier for people whose ears are not attuned to hear it. Like, why don't you play the one that was made with Clipper, which has no gibberish in it? It's just purely electronic sound. Danny, you'll hear him say, I am Danny, but he sounds like a robot. And I don't want to send a mother a clip of her kid sounding like a robot. So,
all right, well, let's play that one.
Yeah.
AZ Clipper, I am Danny. Is that the one, Sherry?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. A little bit harder to make out.
But you can hear it, right? I am Danny.
I can hear I am Danny.
It does sound like a robot. So, you have to know that the sound source you use will greatly influence the sound of the EVP. So if I'm doing a reading for someone who's really new to it, I don't use something like Clipper.
What does FS Mom I'm Happy mean? What does the FS?
FS stands for finger scratch.
Finger scratch. This is one of my favorites because I didn't even know you could do this. All right, guys, this was done with Sherry scratching her fingers against the microphone. Listen to this one. And it's Mom, I'm Happy. Amazing. You guys get that?
Sounds to me almost like Danny's voice if he were whispering. Like I can recognize tones of his voice, but more like he's whispering, Mom, I'm happy,
Right.
But it fills your heart because that's what all you want to know is that they're happy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see. We got that one. I got here's phone here to get everybody together.
Oh, let me explain this first.
Yeah.
The first AREI conference was being held in Arizona, and I was a presenter. So I was on the phone with the hotel making a reservation for a room. And me and this fella are trying to talk, and intermittently there would be, but absolutely, we couldn't even hear each. It wasn't like static on the line. It took over the line, and the poor guy was getting frustrated. It wasn't until the third time that it occurred to me, record that. So I run and get the computer, bring up Audacity, and I play it back, and I hear here to get everybody together. So it sounds very choppy because it came through static, but you can hear it.
Right. And this came over the phone while you were talking to the booking agent or whatever.
Freaking phone. Yeah.
Okay. So here we go.
Here to get everybody together, here to get, and that came right through the telephone. I wasn't trying to record EVPs.
Yeah. Yeah. I can hear that. What's AA?
Well, AA or AZ?
It just says AA.
I'm not sure. Which one is it?
Let's try it.
My name is Sheri. What's yours?
That's the one. That's the one that's his voice.
That's a good
And
one.
I don't know why I put AA down there. I don't know. It's an early one. But yeah, you play it again.
My name is Sheri. What's yours? My name is Sheri. What's yours?
Daniel. And
So
that's
quiet,
very
peaceful.
and as close to his voice as I've been ever could imagine getting. So
What process was you using there for that session?
human vocal gibberish and Audacity.
Yeah.
It's all I used for the first year until I met Vicki Talbot, and then she opened my mind to using other sound sources that would provide what's called that transform EVP, which didn't start with language. And she's extraordinary. She used to be able to get EVPs from her washer and dryer running.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
There's little ones.
My team, my spirit team, calls me little one. I'll come on that line and they'll be like, there's little one. So yeah, you'll hear.
Okay, here goes. There's little one. I can hear little one.
Yeah, the first there's, I'm not sure, but little one is very clear.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Here's little one.
The next one is Shifter Relax Mom.
This is really interesting. Shifter is, well, I don't need to grab the iPhone. Vicki Talbot told me about it. It's on, it's an app that's on the phone. And so I just got the app. And it's also just kind of like the sounds, you were producing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hold the phone by the microphone and I record it into Audacity. And then I go through and listen. And yeah, that it said, relax, Mom. And that's so Danny.
Yeah. Shifter Relax Mom. So relax, Mom. And it has an echo to it. Yeah, relax, Mom.
Yeah, it also reminds me of Danny's voice as if he were whispering. So it will come through on. It's so fascinating. These are all different sound sources.
Okay, this one is B34 Alexandria. Are you happy?
All of the time, she says.
All the time.
This was from a reading I did for Alexandria's parents. She passed young. She had an illness. And you hear all of the time.
Oh, wow. Wow. Now, were her parents with you at the time?
No, we do this over the telephone. A great many of the people that I work with don't live in the state that I'm in, But
yeah.
we don't need that. If Mr. Edwards can get energy directed from Great Britain to the United States, I don't think we need people in the room.
Sure.
Right?
Let's see here. B34 Alexandria, are you happy all the time? Here we go, guys.
Alexandria, are you happy?
There it was. There was a pause, then all the time. Let's play that one more time.
Alexandria, are you happy?
Yeah, there she was. And that was gibberish method.
Yep. That's all I used for the first year. That's all I knew of,
Okay. And here's one of my very favorites that Sheri sent me. It says Portuguese into English. Say something to.
Well, what it was that Sonia Rinaldi sent me some gibberish in Portuguese. That's her native tongue. And it's a little boy named Lorenzo. And I said to Danny, I played the gibberish and I said, say something in English so I know I can use this. And then you'll hear, I speak in English.
Oh, very clear. Okay, guys, you don't have to listen real hard for this one because it's right in your face. Here we go.
Say something to me in English to let me know I should use this.
I speak in English.
My most favorite.
One more time.
Say something to me in English to let me know I should use this.
I speak in English.
Oh, that's
I
amazing.
jumped out of my boots when I heard that. I couldn't believe it. But I do believe that anyone that really wanted to do this could do it. I guess there's people with, it sounds so complicated, until you do it. It sounds like this big complicated process. But I always say to people, it's just like we used to do back in the day when we take our big LPs and record them so we would have a cassette in the car, we'd make cassettes of music. That's really all that we do. We set up the conditions. If spirit didn't come and work with us, we would only have, like we used to when we would put our LPs on cassettes, we would have the song, you'd have the Beatles song or whatever it was on your cassette. The reason it does come back with I speak in English and not just Lorenzo going blah, 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 is that they know how to do something we don't know how to do. And they are working with us to do this. Yeah. So I think that anyone, if they really, really love someone on the other side or just really, really wanted contact, what we're doing is creating conditions by running sound, recording it, and asking if anyone is present, and if they are, will they answer this question or whatever. And
I always start with the same basic questions. They got to get bored with me sometimes. I'm here. Hey, guys, I'm Sean Burris. I'm here to contact the spirit realm. How are you today? Because you're supposed to talk to them. All they are is human beings. Yep. They're just passed over. Yep. And you would talk to them like you would want to be talked to. So just like I'm talking to Sheri right now. Hey, Sheri, how you doing today? And that's how I always start out. And sometimes it works for me, but it seems like I got to get them warmed up sometimes to start talking.
Like I just go on that line that I have, that one that Keith made that I told you, and they'll just be like, oh, there's little one, but mostly they're like loving counsel. Put
me on that line, will you?
I'll send you the recording. It may work for you. It doesn't.
Put me on the clairvoyant line.
Well, I've sent it to so many people and they say they can't hear anything. So I think that it just works for me for whatever reasons. I thank God for it. But, I think the churches are so against this because I think that they know that there is both, first of all, they want to keep control, and they don't, if you could just talk to Jesus or talk to, whoever you need the church. Right. So they also want to keep control of people. But I think also there is the dark side, and some people really could if I could get impinged, anybody could get impinged.
Sure could.
So, it is a risky business because you can't see.
What happened to me with the Dybbuk box?
The possibility of disaster exists with the possibility of wonderful things. Right. So I think it's important, to just cover yourself in light. This is what this woman taught me when I went to Santa Fe. And she says that before she takes a car trip, she envisions her car in light, and she envisions light on me like the whole journey. So because it's protective.
How do you think our kids will remember us by? Do you think my kids will think I'm a weird dad when they get older? I got a 16-year-old, I got a 13-year-old, and I got one getting ready to be 22. And I always wonder what they think about old dad sitting in his office sometimes talking to a box.
Well, I think that it's determinant on the child themselves. My daughter, who's very spiritual, she's 30. She absolutely has no problem with what I do, although it wouldn't be for her. She's more into pagan religions, and she's got her own thing, and she knows that I'm completely sincere and that I'm doing something, but she can hardly ever see an image or hear an EVP. Right. But she's certainly supportive of me. My older boy, on the other hand, he hates EVP. He thinks he really would like me to not do it, because there was this YouTube where they asked all these people, they played a word, and half of them were sure it was Yanni. and half of them are sure it's nanny. You know, to my son Aaron, it's not a perfect science. He just thinks it's just bogus, you know. So I think it depends on the nature of your children. One of them may really jump into it and think it's wonderful. Danny always understood a little more about this stuff and was more open to it. So and now he's a big help from the other side.
Yeah.
So it's individual, you know. And
I don't think Dad helped me because he was so religious. I think he would look at any of this as
he might
kind
as
of,
taboo.
yeah, taboo. And so I don't think Pop would help me. But I'm going to keep calling out for him and see. I don't want to bother him, you know. Well, maybe he transcended to some.
Yeah, I don't think we can really make, you know, look, they're on their path. I don't think we can mess them up. Love
Right.
is love. Love is the greatest force, the only thing worth living for. The only thing that really dignifies this human existence, I think, is love. Otherwise, I think it's just a constant, you know, struggle for survival. You know, you're striving to stay alive, eat, nourish your body. You know, it's all about just staying alive. And what the hell is that? You know, it's just like a process of survival. But when there's love, it dignifies everything.
And ain't it great that there's something else? Thank God there's
God.
something.
Yeah. So
I
I
don't
don't
want a
think.
world without mystery.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Seth said to us once, you know, you guys all want the answers to all the questions. He said, but if you had the answers to everything, you would all just die of boredom.
Yeah, exactly.
So the mystery is great, but it's what imbues life with meaning is the people we love.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're coming from a place of love, it's not gonna harm your dad. He may not want to involve himself in it, but don't worry about annoying them. I
Yeah.
think the only time that we really put a burden on them is when parents are so bereaved they can't get out of the bedroom. That is, a lot of children will come through and say, Danny once, but this was not through EVP, this was direct into my head. But he said, if you want to lift me up, you lift yourself up. And that way you lift us both up. But, you know, he would say, understand my dilemma. He said, especially those of us who died accidentally or on purpose, but by our own hand. How are we to go on into spirit and live a free existence if our mom can't get out of bed? He said,
Yeah.
don't, like, a lot of parents are in a headset that says, well, if my child can't eat a good meal anymore, I'm not going to eat a good meal. Well, your child doesn't breathe air anymore. Maybe you should just stop breathing. So, you know,
Right.
it gets to the point when you realize that they are aware of the state you're in and they feel so much remorse if they died by their own hand. And there's so much suicide and overdose now.
I know.
Rampant that if you want to set them free, you got to try to get on your feet again. And I say to people, honor them in everything you do. You know, do whatever time is left to you, use it to honor them and not just mourn them and sit in a corner and cry. I know some people who've lost only children and they are not consolable. Now, I do believe that those feelings may weigh on their loved ones, but by loving them and coming to them in love, they may want to deal with you, they may not, but you're not going to hurt them. You're never going to hurt your dad loving him.
Right.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Well, let's get into your books, where people can find them, where they can find out more about
Amazon,
you.
of course. Well, I have a website, SheriPerl.com, so anyone can find me. And the website gives, you know, information as to how to contact my email, so anyone can find me. I should say that at my website, there is a link to what's called the EVP slideshow. I paid a tech guy a fortune to make this. And it's there as a free download. And it's a split screen, half for Macs, half for PCs. And it leads you through the steps to download Audacity, download some gibberish. And there's a few other steps. One that will help create a file called EVP audio, where you save things to. One converts them to MP3 so you can send them to other people. So it's a slideshow that's there completely free. So it's not working with a ghost box, although you can use anything for sound. It doesn't matter, but it gets you the recording program. And then further down on that same page, there's a YouTube video I made demonstrating how I use Audacity. Now, I'm sure there's a lot more function in Audacity that I don't even bother with because I don't know of them and I'm not that techie. So, but it teaches you how to highlight an area and listen to a small area and how to clip it off and all that. So if there's somebody out there that says, God, I really want to try this, how am I ever going to learn it? Go to SheriPerl.com and go down to where it says the EVP slideshow, and you download it. I guess you will have to download it onto either PowerPoint or Keynote if you have a Mac. If you don't have that, that's the only thing you would have to pay for. We used all free software. So they can get to the point where they have sound and they have a recording program and a way to save what they find. So I would let people know that. Yeah, I've wrote a book about my wonderful healing with Mr. Edwards. That's at Amazon. I wrote a book about Danny and finding Danny before I was into EVP. It's called Lost and Found. It's a small book and not too wordy, because when you're first bereaved, you can hardly even read. So I just tried to make it like a hand to reach out. If there's any bereaved parents on this, watching this, if you go to my website, you can join the prayer registry, which is a free service for all bereaved parents, in which the child's name is printed on the prayer registry calendars on their passing date. And then the understanding is that on that date, parents will go to the calendar and see who's in prayer and just send a, hey, how are you? Sending you love. Now, there's no demand that anyone do this, because I don't want to put any pressure on anyone, but there are a good many parents that go on and check out the names. We have a photo gallery, different aspects to the prayer registry, and that's free. Also, there's a book at the website, the Grieving Parents Handbook, and it's not a large book. It's something I wrote, and a whole bunch of other moms helped me, and I raised 3 questions. Why me? Could I have prevented this? How will I live with this? And then mostly mothers, none of the dads did it, but a lot of moms came on and gave advice from their heart about what helped them. Short little paragraphs. Don't let anyone tell you this, or I went to this medium. And so it's just like if someone's really hurt and needing it, it's a really good, you can just download it, print it, or just read it on the computer. But it's just a hand to hold. Because at first, when you lose something, it's hard enough losing a father. My dad passed when I was 26, so he died at 53. And it was absolutely shocking, just shocking and earth-shattering. But when it's a child, it just usurps you, because it's just not the natural order. And it's so hurtful. And so many parents are going to their own children's funerals now due to the amount of overdose and suicides we see today. So the Grieving Parents Handbook is available to anyone that's grieving. Even if it wasn't a child, it could just be grief. And then the last little book I did, we'll never make a penny on it, because we wanted it to be in color. My friend who does the artwork, we wanted it to be in color and have a hardcover. So what it costs to make it is so much. Even if we sell a few, I don't get a penny. But
right.
It's just a book of quotes on life after death, and then some commentary from me about what they're saying in this quote.
Oh, I love it.
I gave it to a woman who was passing from cancer, and she called me up and said it was giving her so much hope. So it's a pretty little like coffee table book.
Yeah.
And that's the work I've done so far.
That's amazing. The stuff you're doing to help the grieved parents and the work you've done, Sheri, people can't hold a candle to it. You have done so much good in your life so far. And I'm just proud to call you my new friend.
Well, I'm really proud to call you my new friend.
Okay, guys, you hear the music. You know what time that is. What a great show. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. I want to say special thanks to tonight's guest, ITC researcher and author Sheri Perl. You can find out more about Sheri at sheriperl.com. Special thanks to all our friends and sponsors. Our friend Brad at Creative Zombie Studios. Check him out for all your website design and content creation. Remember, be the best. Be creative. CreativeZombie.com. Check him out, guys. From the haunted back roads of America, this has been another exclusive Shadow Nation interview. Don't go changing America. You know I won't, because I love you. Good night, everybody.